Music, background music. Over the last days, as has been said again and again, we've been endeavoring to understand the nature of emptiness. And as has been said before, we're not seeking the essence of emptiness, because the essence can only be found of something. But we could ask ourselves, what is it really meant to seek the nature of emptiness? And to do so, we have to understand what nature means. And as has been done already, as was suggested on Tuesday, that we look up the word nature and find that it has many meanings, it has many subtleties, it has many nuances. So what do we really mean when we say we're seeking the nature of emptiness? Well, maybe in the stories we're not going to define the nature, but it could become self-evident with your own seeking, looking in the dictionaries and pondering on the word nature. Putting it together, we might be able to come up with an understanding of what nature is. And this, of course, will lead us very naturally into an understanding of what emptiness is. But there was a great Sultan, and his name was Sultan Akbar. He was a very just and fair monarch, and he very often would go out to the provinces and the suburbs and the towns that constituted his kingdom. And on one such occasion, he went off to visit a far-off village, and he gave them a project. He said he would give a bag of 1,000 pieces of gold to anyone who could paint a picture of him, a portrait of him, that pleased him. So when he came to the village, there were a long line of inhabitants of the village, all carrying their portraits that they'd made of him. And amongst this line of people was a young boy by the name of Hussein al-Mansur. But he didn't have a scroll under his arm or a picture, but he was in the queue, and he watched the Sultan's face as each person came up with their portrait, and he could see the Sultan's face changing. One moment it was scowling, the next moment it was impatient, and the next moment it was, until finally the Sultan, you could see, was so frustrated and so angry, he burst out, if only someone could just depict me as I really am, that's what I'm looking for, someone who could show my real self. Well, it so happened that the very next person to come up and give their portrait to him was Hussein al-Mansur, the young boy. And he had a big grin on his face. The Sultan looked at him and said, "What are you grinning about? What have you got to show me?" Well, young Hussein went into his cloak and brought out a little handle, handed it to the Sultan, a mirror. Well, the Sultan looked in the mirror and laughed and laughed and laughed. He said, "Well, this is hardly a portrait of me, but it is my real self. You're a very clever young man. When you grow to manhood, come to my palace, and I'll be sure to be able to give you a suitable position in my court." Well, That's one story. But there's a second story that's still about Hussein al-Mansur, who did grow to manhood and did go to the palace of the Sultan. And he did become a chief advisor of the Sultan Akbar, much loved, kept by the Sultan's side as a counselor and advisor, and an entertainer because he had great wit. But the Sultan Akbar gave him another name. He called him Birbal. And Birbal has become very famous, and there are many stories about him. And one of those stories is the occasion when, amongst the court there are a lot of people that were very, very jealous of Birbal, the favors that he got from Sultan Akbar and how he was loved and revered by the Sultan. And one in particular was the Sultan's barber, who, as he was cutting the Sultan's head one day, had a thought, a nasty thought. He said to the Sultan, "Sire, I have to tell you, I had a dream last night that your father came to me from heaven." "Oh, what did he say?" said King Akbar. "What did he say?" "Oh," said the barber, "he said that he's very happy in paradise, but he does miss being entertained, the jesting and the laughter. And surely, sire, Birbal is the only person suitable to entertain your beloved father in heaven." Well, Sultan Akbar was really concerned about this because he did love Birbal. But when a request came from his father in paradise, what could he do? So he called Birbal to him and he said, "I've been told by my barber in a dream that my father needs someone to entertain him in paradise. Are you willing to go?" Well, of course, Birbal, being the smart man that he was, realized that it was the barber that was conniving. And he said to the Sultan, "Yes, my sire, I'll gladly go to Paris and entertain your beloved father. But will you just give me 1 week to prepare?" "Certainly," said Sultan Akbar. So Birbal hastened back to his house and started to dig a hole in his front doorstep. This was going to be his grave. But underneath he made a tunnel that went straight to his bedroom. So after the week was up, with great ceremony, having had agreement from Sultan Akbar that because of the traditions of Birbal's family, he had to be buried in the grave in front of his doorstep. He was buried alive with great formality, pomp and ceremony. But of course he went straight into the tunnel and up into his bedroom, and all of those in the palace who had been jealous of Birbal rubbed their hands together and was glad to see the back of him. 6 months passed, and out comes Birbal, a matted beard, rough hair around his head. Well, Sultan Akbar, when he suddenly realized that behind that matted beard and straggly locks was his beloved Birbal. "Oh, you're back! What happened?" Birbal said, "Oh, I was very happy in paradise and your father was very, very happy. We laughed and joked together. But I had to come back because he told me that there was something that really bothered him." And that was that he had a matted beard and scraggly hair because there was no barber. So of course when the barber heard these words, he fainted because he knew that his sneaky plan There are many stories about Deva, as there are about Mula Nasruddin. And all of them, as we know, have a deep meaning. And we might wonder, even though this first anecdote does give us an interlinking with our endeavors, we might ask ourselves, what does this second anecdote have to do with our attempting to understand emptiness? You know the ways of storytelling, and maybe there's a few more stories to come before we find out how they all come together to bring about the result that we're seeking. And that is for us to come to an awareness of not only the nature of emptiness, but that we are so